Chapter 938 of One Piece is out. And while we sadly did not get the continuation at the events at Udon Prison, we instead got a nice overview of what is currently going on in Wano. And we also continued the interaction between Zoro, Komurasaki and Toko that contained a very significant revelation. But before we look at our new dream team, let's start off with the snapshots of Wano we got in this chapter, so we can keep the story consistent. Our first location therefore is an abandoned village in Curry that has been taken over by the Minks. We see Kinemon arriving in front of Inuarashi and Carrot, who is letting them know that their secret recruiting message has been found out. While Kinemon explains to us that the message was actually encoded in order to keep it out of the wrong hands, I wonder if they really encoded it well enough. The message shows us two birds with flaming feathers, a crescent moon and a serpent at its feet. I personally would argue that anyone who is closely connected to the Shogun and has any common sense would see the symbolism in this. The clear reference to the Kozuki crest, the reference to the Fire Festival, and the clear reference to the Shogun or Kaido as the serpent, as well as the crossed heads of the birds that look like swords. I would think that someone saw this and simply puzzled it together. Kinemon though seems to imply that this design was chosen carefully and makes it rather sound like someone sold them out. Now the reason for this might be though that the Shogun's men also have found out about the crescent moon tattoo that the followers of the clan have tattooed on their ankles. So maybe that fact wasn't very common knowledge in the first place. The most likely answer to this riddle would of course be Kyoshiro, who we saw holding and apparently recognizing the symbol at the banquet. The obvious conclusion of this is that Kyoshiro showed this to the Shogun's men. There are just three problems with this. Firstly, why did Kyoshiro keep the message if he sold out the rebellion? We can see him in this chapter holding the sheet of paper in his hand while discussing the consequences of Komurasaki's death in the Pleasure District. Yet secondly, we know that Komurasaki is still alive and that he apparently helped her escape. And thirdly, how did he know about the tattoo? While Kyoshiro is without a doubt a still very mysterious character and Oda seems to hint at him being responsible for spreading this information, in my opinion it would make much more sense if someone else actually sold the lions out. Whoever was responsible for this revelation though, the consequences it had are really drastic. In the capital, the Beast Pirates, together with the Shogun's men, are hunting down anyone who carries the crescent moon symbol on their ankle. As we already learned in the previous chapter, Basil Hawkins as well as X-Drake seem to have been tasked with overlooking this operation, who we got to see patrolling the streets in this chapter. Finally, we stop at Ebisu Town, where we found out that Nami actually didn't let Sanji's peeping session in the bathhouse pass as it seemed to be the case last chapter. Much rather, we see a barely recognizable Sanji with a face that pretty much only resembles a big swollen ball that doesn't look very natural, as also Frankie comments. Meanwhile, the topic of the leaked symbols also seems to be heavily discussed in their round, as Shinobu and Law get in each other's faces. Shinobu accuses Law's captured crew of spilling the information to the enemy and suggests that they even should dispose of them, which, no surprise, does not go very well with Law, who relatably turns pretty hostile at that remark. The scene that follows is pretty amazing in my opinion. We see Shinobu breaking into tears and actually shouting at Law, who usually is the serious one, that this isn't a game and how important this opportunity is after 20 years of waiting and suffering. Only Kanjuro finally manages to calm her down by reminding her how important Law and the Straw Hats are to their cause. While this scene is not very long and might seem insignificant, I think it was tremendously important for our understanding of the Wano arc. While we got to know from very early on how the country is suffering under the rule of Kaido and the Shogun, the arc very quickly became more lighthearted, especially in recent chapters. Luffy's having fun at the prison, the girls are taking a bath at the bathhouse, Sanji is peeping at the bathhouse, and Chopper's having a field trip with the child Big Mom. We also have the in general more comedic appearance and behavior of many characters like Kanjuro, Raizo, or exactly Shinobu, who was never a character I could take very seriously until now. But in this scene, she reminds us what is really at stake here, why the situation is in fact very serious and what the people of Wano have truly suffered through in the past 20 years. So I'm actually quite thankful that Oda put this emotional scene in this chapter, since I caught myself getting a bit too easygoing feelings in this arc as well. Anyway, after Shinobu's emotional outburst, we see someone entering the house, and it's Tonoyasu, the always smiling guy who we first met traveling with Zoro. To everyone's surprise, he recognizes Shinobu and Kanjuro and reveals the coded message to the collective group, saying that he's now ready for the fight. I'm actually really curious to see who Tonoyasu really is and what he's capable of when he gets serious. Now though, let's finally cut back over to the Ringo region, where we witness the aftermath of Zoro's fight with Kamazu and Kyukimaru. Kamazu lies motionless on the ground, having been completely defeated by Zoro's three-sword attack, Gyukimaru, on the other hand, who is grinning and thus seems to have acknowledged Zoro to a certain extent, picks up Kamazu's other scythe and turns around to leave over Ohagi Bridge. Zoro, meanwhile, is furious about getting himself injured before the final battle, before suddenly collapsing into the snow. He regains his consciousness in a small shrine in the middle of the cemetery, still being anxious about Shusui. We see Komurasaki sitting beside his bed, mixing some sort of ointment for his wounds, and thanking Zoro for saving their lives. Zoro, of course, tries to get up immediately to go after and look for his sword, to which Komurasaki throws herself a little too passionately around his injured arm to pull him back, which instead of a potential romantic scene results in a rather comedic moment with Zoro screaming in pain. Meanwhile, Toko lets us in on the secret that potentially saved Komurasaki's life in the capital. She seems to have stolen some sort of toad oil that has the potential to heal any wound instantly, no matter how deep it is. Now, while this might sound something like Usopp's fake toad oil, they actually seem to have seen it in action, and I'm therefore very curious to find out if it really works, who made this oil, and if there are any powers involved in it. Meanwhile, Komurasaki tells Zoro about Gyukimaru, who is known to ambush armed people who try to cross the Ohagi Bridge. For some reason, that seems to lead Zoro to the conclusion that there is now no hurry in chasing him anymore, and maybe he just thinks that Gyukimaru will stay close to that area, but since no one knows where he actually lives, how can he be sure that he will find him again? Maybe he simply plans on waiting on the bridge for him again, bearing his other two swords. Now, Zoro in turn asks the two girls why they were actually chased by Orochi's killer, to which Toko starts introducing herself to Zoro, telling him that if you put the honorable prefix O before her name, she's called Otoko, which is the Japanese word for boy, which Zoro finds only mildly amusing. Komurasaki now states that she knows that Zoro seems to be an outsider, and tells him that she's looking for her brother, who she hasn't seen in 20 years, and who she suspects might be in Wano right now. And yes, just like that, out of the blue, she introduces herself to Zoro as Kozuki Hiyori. Damn, break next week, awesome. Now, while the fact that Komurasaki might be Hiyori has been speculated a lot in recent chapters, it is nonetheless a huge revelation for the story. At first I was thinking about whether there was a chance that she was trying to mislead Zoro here, but I really couldn't come up with any rational reason for this, so I doubt that there will be any further plot twists in this. And it makes sense, since Komurasaki, or rather Hiyori as we should call her now, has been set up as an important character in this arc from very early on. Now, what are the main takeaways from this chapter? First, we learned about the consequences of the hidden message and the Kozuki crest being revealed. Many of the followers that have been recruited in the capital are now being arrested by the Shogun and Kaido's men, which poses a real problem to their plan, not only in terms of manpower, but also in terms of secrecy, since it is now obvious that a revolution is being planned. It will be very interesting to see how this problem will be resolved in the future. Secondly, we had a very intense and emotional scene with Shinobu and Kanjuro that reminded us that the Wano arc is actually pretty serious, and that the characters involved have suffered heavily despite their appearance. I was happy to get that reminder from Oda, which also helped me to take Shinobu more seriously. We also got Tonoyasu joining up with the Lions, who has been a very interesting character right from the start. Now thirdly, we got another glimpse at Kyoshiro. While Oda seems to suggest that he was responsible for leaking the information, he also seems to have supported the daughter of Odin, Hiyori, and helped her escape. As I say in almost every chapter, I think that he gets more and more mysterious the more we learn about him, and I definitely like how Oda sets him up a lot. Now lastly, we got the aftermath of Zoro's fight that resulted in him getting taken care of Komurasaki, who was later revealed to be Momonosuke's sister Hiyori. We learned about a healing toad oil that might allow Zoro to actually fight at full strength in the final battle, and it might be part of the answer to how Hiyori escaped certain death in the capital. And we also got a hint that Komurasaki, or rather Hiyori, might have a thing for Zoro a little bit. All in all, this was a rather short chapter that gave us a quick overview over the current situation in Wano. We finally got to find out the true identity of Momonosuke's sister Hiyori, as well as the problematic situation for the Alliance. I can't believe there's a break next week, since I really want to see Zoro's reaction to what just happened. But now, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to be notified for any future content of mine. Or dislike, don't share and unsubscribe. It's a free world, people. Thanks so much for listening, I hope to see you around next time, and until then, have a great week.